Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon to Dr. Noliana binti Kamaruddin. We are from Group 13. My name is Adiana Shafirah binti Azwan and my group mate Nur Hidayatul Aini binti Zai. We would like to present on the topic number 10, which is Socio-economic development of Japan. So this is our contents. First, we will be looking at the introduction, and then we move to the brief economic history of Japan, then rapid economic growth of Japan. For the next part, causes of socio-economic changes in Japan, which we have provided 4 different parts, which are aging population, globalization, technological innovation, and improvements in standard of living. And then the poverty in Japan. Last but not least, the conclusion. I will proceed the presentation with the introduction. So currently, we have seen that Japan can be known as the most matured in its social-economic sector among the Asia countries, which they are confronting in several major socio-economic changes, which makes them become the most innovative among the Asia countries. This is because of they are rich in tradition of institutional philanthropy. They also have this sizable impact investing market. They also active and creative in corporate sector, and also a vibrant support ecosystem. At the same time, Japan also has emerged as a leader in environmental, social, and governance, investing as an early pioneer in social impact bonds in Asia. Therefore, let's take a look at the brief economic history of Japan. For this part, we have divided into 4 periods of brief economic history of Japan. For the first period, which is the rise and fall of the emperor. So, at first, these Japanese people, they were the hunter-gatherers with limited agriculture activity, and they also lived separately in small villages, but they were connected by long distance maritime trade, and they will live relatively peaceful. But until this rice cultivation was introduced, their village has grew bigger and their social order was established, and this is how the religious and military leaders, they started to form these mini states, which this has led to many war has happened. Therefore, because of this war always happen between them, between the clans, between the villages, people in the villages, the imperial family, they took the power, took the real power, and they subordinated other influential clans. Next, period 2, the age of the samurai. For samurai, they think that a land was the most precious asset for them to be defended with their own life. From the end of 12th century and onward, these samurai leaders, they have formed the government, which called Kamakura government. Basically, this government is to guarantee their right to own land and distributed land to those with distinguished service in war. However, there were attacks made by Mongolian people, which it has collapsed the Kamakura government. But in 1603, the samurai leaders got to reunite the Japan with establishment of the Edo government, which is this Edo government today is called Tokyo today. It's called Tokyo today. After the peace was restored under a strict bureaucratic during the Edo period, this Edo government has shown dynamically evolving period for the last 2 centuries. This Edo period has lasted for 2 centuries, with the agricultural productivity gradually grows and commercial crops, trade, finance and industry also constantly grow during this era. Next, the third period, which is Meiji modernization, industrialization and wars. So after the toppling of the Edo government in 1867, the new Meiji government restored the emperor as a supreme ruler and adopted a policy of rapid westernization, modernization and militarization, which this era was called the Meiji Restoration. During this Meiji Restoration, the economic area, they absorbed the Western technology and the creation of modern industry, which it has become their primary national goals. So textile industry is the most successful industry during that time, which it has constantly emerged as an international competitive industry. And also during World War I, Japanese also has experienced an enormous export-led boom in their economic system, in their economic sector during that era. Next, period 4, post-war growth. After Japan was defeated in 1945 and the country's economic base was destroyed. From the mid 1950s through the early 1970s, Japan, they have enjoyed very rapid growth and industrialization. So their manufacturing sector, they has expanded strongly, and Japan has become the second largest economic in the world after US by the end of 1960s. And then their global trade has expanded, and they had a stable exchange rate contributed to the miracle growth in their economic sector. Also, their asset bubble in land and stock has occurred in the late 1980s that burst in 1990 until 1991. And since the early 1990s, even until today, the Japanese economy has virtually never stopped growing. Moving on to the next part, which is a rapid economic growth of Japan. As shown on the graph 1, it is shown that GDP growth in Japan from 1970s until 2020. In post-war of Japan, they experienced a high growth period for approximately 20 years from the mid 1950s to the early 1970s, and their real GDP or GNP growth rate frequently exceeded 10% during this period. And also that the Japanese economic also have shifted to the stable growth in the early 1970s to around 5% after they enjoying the high growth rate. And at the same time, the bubble crash in the early 1990s caused the lower growth and around 1 until 3% at present. So some of them insist on the importance of institutional and structural changes in post-war Japan under occupied army's control, such as agricultural land reform, Zaibatsu dissolution, labor democratization, and others stress the roles of economic policy of Japan government, such as industrial policy made by MITI, which is their Ministry of International Trade and Industry, among the others. Moving on to the next part, which is causes of socio-economic changes in Japan. I will explain only two, which is aging population and globalization, as my friends will explain more on the technological innovation and improvements in standard of living. First, aging population. Graph 2 shows the percentage of population aged 65 or older in Japan and USA from the year 1990 until 2008. The red line is Japan and the blue line is represent United States. It shows that Japan percentage is higher than United States, which is it always increase. Japanese population is always increase, while United States almost remain the same for this population of age 65 or older. Even WHO also they agree that by 2030, 1 in every 3 people will be 65 plus years old, and 1 in 5 people 75 plus years will continuously rapidly increasing. WHO also think that this is the reflecting improvements of Japan in their health and longevity. Life expectancy at birth is highest in the world, which is 86% for women and 80% for men. Japan also they enjoy in the highest life expectancy in the world, with relatively low health care costs, because they always implementing policies to encourage the older adults to engage in productive activities. Therefore, it shows that Japan they always preceded with other countries in experience a super aging society, not only in rural area but also in their urban communities. So next, for the aging population, shows as shown in graph 3, which is Japan birth rate from 1950 until 2020. It shows a rapid decline of the birth rate in Japan, and it may be continuously decline because their birth rate falling because there are fewer good opportunities for young people and especially men in their country's economy. So they believe that the men are still widely expected to be breadwinners, and they need to support their families, which at the same time they have a lack of good jobs that may be creating a class of men who don't want to marry and have children because they think that themselves, their self, and also their potential partner could not afford to have a family and children. So this has led them to have later marriage or no marriage at all. And this also has contributed to the Japan's fertility is likely to remain very low for some time to come. Even at the same time, many young people in Japan are facing economic insecurity due to the lack of regular employment. Other factors also could be the burden that been carried by the Japanese woman, because the woman will only, most of them will only do the housework, and they do the child care by themselves, and they have this culture that makes it difficult to do both jobs outside the home and be a mother at the same time being a mother. So the younger generation of Japanese women, they have increasingly opted to continue working rather than get married and have children, which they have children and give up their career. So they rather to have career than having a child at home. At the same time, there is a phenomena called the herbivore man, which is these men, they are not quite interested in getting married or having a girlfriend. This herbivore man term carry a quite broad meaning, which does not only mean that men who do not pursue romantic interests, but could also imply to men who do not conform to the traditional characteristic of a man, which is the men who are gentle, kind, and lack romantic assertiveness. And then the next causes, which is globalization. So globalization is also one of the major contributing factor in the changes of socio-economic development in Japan. So Japan and the Japanese people, they have not escaped the effects of globalization in many social groups that that brought them to the positive changes. So for example, we'll be looking at the women in Japan. Today, women in Japan, they have if to compare with the traditional the traditional Japanese women, their employment system they had a very limited role. They were usually confined to routine jobs with little or no training at all, and expected to live upon marriage and childbirth. So because of the Japanese people and the Japan has gone through this globalization, it this em, this traditional Japanese employment of women has changed with the societal and demographic change, and with the along with the educational advance and increase acceptance of the ideology of equal labor rights, which have encouraged a gradual increase in Japanese women's determination to continue works. So today it shows that it can be it can be seen that women in Japan had through globalization has forced them change in the employment legislation, which is increased trend toward continuing work after marriage or childbirth. Another important effect of Japan's globalization also, it can be the Japanese large companies have actively set up overseas production sites, and they are shifted more toward its production activities to abroad since the middle 1980s. So this trend has continuously growing in the market in Asian countries, which is particularly in China. Even until today, we can see that a lot of Japan companies has conquered the economic development in certain country. For example, Toyota, SoftBank, Mitsubishi, Sony. There were a lot of branches. Even their consumers has been using their products since its establishment. So it shows that the globalization really helps in shaping the socio-economic development of Japan from early globalization era until today.
Hello, my name is Nur Hidayatul Aini Bitizai. So as for my part, I will talk about another causes of socio-economic changes in Japan, which are technological innovation, improvement of standard of living, and also poverty issues. So first thing first, I would like to elaborate about three Japan's main technological industries, which are robotics, electronics, and also automotive. But before that, have you heard about monozukuri? Well, monozukuri is a concept that describes Japan's manufacturing industry. It covers from production, techniques, and philosophies to support Japan's manufacturing industry and the products as well. Robotics has been the driving force behind Japan's monozukuri culture. As we know, Japan is the world's top exporter of robots, working on the front lines in a diverse array of areas including science, medicine, and even automotive. Secondly, electronics. In 2019, total production value of electronics in Japan amounted around 10.5 trillion Japanese yen. Japan is also among top electronics manufacturers in the world. For example, like Sony, Nintendo, Canon, Sharp, Panasonic, etc. Third is automotive. There are giant Japanese automotive companies in the world like Toyota, Honda, Mazda, Suzuki, and many more. The emphasis was now on government and big business cooperation to encourage manufacturing and heavy industry with sizable increases in export. Japan has showed rapid increases in economic growth, thus it led to becoming the second largest world economy by 1968. We go to the next slide. So improvement in standards of living, the main public policies targeted at achieving this goal are monetary policies, focus on investment of two things, which are technology and also human capital. For the high-income countries like Japan, the challenge of economic growth is to push continually for a more educated workforce that can create to and invest in and also apply new technologies. And monetary policies are also to keep inflation low and stable, to minimize the risk of exchange rate fluctuation, encouraging domestic and international competition as well. For example, in 2012, Shinzo Abe, at that time was the Prime Minister of Japan, has come out with a plan included both fiscal stimulus and an increase in the money supply. The plan was quite successful in the short run. Next. So these are some Japan economic facts that I found, and I also have included the reference at the bottom of the slide, as you can see. So the first one is the average household net adjusted disposable income per capita is USD 29,798 a year, lower than the OECD average of USD 33,604 a year. The percentage of employees working very long hours is higher than the OECD average of 11%. Richest and poorest gap, the top 20% of the population earn more than 6 times as much as the bottom 20%. 75% of people aged 15 to 64 in Japan have a paid job, while as in aspect of education, the percentage of adults aged 25 to 64 have completed upper secondary education, above the OECD average of 78%. Life expectancy at birth in Japan is 84 years, 4 years higher than the OECD average of 80 years. Next. So despite all the great advancement in technology, Japan also faced poverty issues. So the poverty rate was higher than the OECD average of 11.4% for 2013, indicating that Japan's economic disparity remains large among advanced nations. The proportion of people with a disposable income of less than half of the median income of the total population fell 0.5 percentage point to 15.6% in 2015. The underclass, which is made up of non-regular employees and numbers about 9.3 million, or 50% of the working population, almost all part-time workers belong to underclass. You know, the biggest problem is that once a person is hired as a non-regular employee, they tend to be stuck in that position for the rest of their life, even if they change jobs. So even the economy improves, the life of the people in the underclass don't. Yes. And the new trend of poverty in Japan which is child poverty. It's like children cafeteria is now booming in Japan. 3.5 million Japanese children are living in poverty. Children cafeterias is like providing free or low price meals to local kids in Japan, and there are locals, volunteers and government working for them, help run them and cooking food for them. And children cafeterias in Japan has increased to 3,718 at least as of May 2019. It is not just a measure to tackle poverty, but a hub for regional exchange. So, for conclusion, Japan is one of the most developed countries in the world that has been witnessing an increase in economic as well as socio-economic status from the early 90s to today. However, with their economic development, Japan must still take pragmatic steps to address the urban poverty problem, especially children's poverty. So that's all from us. Thank you.